So, hello everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of Diplomacy Talks with Samin. And today we have with us our guest, SM Azharul Islam, who is currently serving as a research professional at a special security think tank named Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies. Hello, sir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, sir, for the cordial invitation. It's really my honor and privilege.
It's also an honor for me. So, sir, before we start with the topic, can you please give a small introduction about yourself?
Obviously, sir, I'm currently working as a research professional at a security think tank based in Vaidhara, DOHS. My boss served as a military advisor to the president previously. And we are working on peace and security related issues which are concerned with the field of international relations.
So, sir, we will simply jump on the topic now. That's colonization and the post-colonial world. So, sir, can you please explain this issue and what are your views on this?
Yes, sir. It is very interesting. The term colonization actually refers to the fact that one country which has superior authority over another country, which remains dependent on it for a certain cause, or the superior country or the dominant country controls it for its own motives. For instance, if we can see, the reasons behind colonization are many. One of the biggest reasons would be resources. As we all know, that the colonizers, they were mainly interested in extracting resources from certain nations. And if we also look back at the impacts, to be very honest, there were certain benefits and also certain drawbacks. And if we talk about the benefits, let me start with the process that currently we are speaking English.
Yes.
And that itself is a fact that it is an impact of colonization. Because the British ruled us for 200 years and they left us with this language and they almost ruled all parts of the world, and that is why English has become such a prominent and a universally recognized language which is spoken by people worldwide. And now if we look at other impacts as well, we all know that in 1947 there was partition of India. It was done by the British Empire, more specifically Radcliffe Committee, and the entire divisions. Just look what it did to us in the current scenario. We can see that those divisions led to a lot of impacts which exist even today. There are border divisions, there are border clashes, and there are also regional conflicts. We can see today it is still prevalent only because of the divisions which were done during that time. And the divisions also uprooted 10 million people, and it also caused deaths of approximately 1 million people. So we can see that the impact of the colonization has been huge, and it has been detrimental to some certain countries because the trauma still lives on. And now let us look into Africa. If we look into that continent, it used to be one of the continents in sources, in terms of cultures, in terms of the people dynamics. But now, if we look into the region, what happened? The region now suffers from hunger. The region now suffers from diseases, so many other problems. Now, what is the reason? It's obvious. Because of colonization, they have suffered so much that the trauma still lives on. And if we talk about the factor of slavery, slavery was came in existence only because of the fact that, the colonists, they considered themselves to be superior. And there was also indenture contract, if you are aware of it. Indenture contract is a contract where those who are bought by the colonizers, employees, they had to serve for a specific period of time as slaves, and it can also be for a lifetime. So we can see that the impacts are profound and they're huge and they're countless. So now let us move forward to the Indian subcontinent aspect, what happened to us as a nation, Bangladesh, how did we suffer from the aspect of colonization. If we come to it, it is very obvious that we were divided by the British as a part and parcel of Pakistan over another country, India. Now, is that even possible? That has never happened in the world history, that a country has been divided into two parts, and in between lies a giant country. There was West Pakistan at one side of India, and there is East Pakistan on the other side of India. So now what? It's obvious that there were cultural differences because our culture was more related to the Indian culture, and they were also exploiting us. The people from the West Pakistan were exploiting us to the fullest.
Yeah.
So the division was about to happen because we were divided based on religions, but the division was not the right thing. It was a wrong decision from the British Empire, as a result of which we suffered and we went through wars and we went through disasters. So we can see that the conflicts or the divisions that we still see even today or that still exist was a result of the British partition. They divided us into these conflicts because their policy was that. We all know, even if we go back to the history books and the world international relations experts, they always say that the British policy was to divide and rule because they realized that the only thing which can divide us was religion.
Yeah.
It was proven that before they came, there were no problems between Muslims and Hindus. We were like brothers and we were doing everything closely. When they came in, they realized that we need to divide this united population and rule over them.
Yeah.
And the only instrument they had was religion. And this is what they did. They gave permission to the All India Congress Party on the basis of Hinduism. And they also gave permission to form All India Muslim League, which was largely because of the Muslim population. So as we saw these political parties, which were very prominent back then, being formed on the basis of religions, the communal riots started. And when the communal riots broke in, we saw how disastrous the consequences were for the Indian subcontinent. And the best part about all this is that today we can see the tensions between our neighboring countries. The tensions, all of them and most of them exist because of how the Radcliffe Committee actually divided the maps.
Yeah.
So the impacts, as we are talking about, they're huge. And let me ask the colonizers, who gave them the right to actually divide us like this and for their interest, and also who gave them the right to decide that they are superior than us? It's nothing like that, right?
Yeah.
We all are created equal. We all are equal, but they created these things, and you know, most often when we talk about these impacts with them, obviously they always come up with one thing. And most interestingly, I also have to mention this fact that World War One and World War Two, most of the soldiers which fought on the British side were also from India. So you see, our contributions were enormous, and even the Indians were not given the due credit for participating in the war to fight for the British. So just imagine how we were used recklessly. And now I'm coming to the point when the colonizers try to justify that whatever they did is right. And you know how they justify it. It's very interesting. They say that we were barbaric people, and they made us more civilized. They say it mostly for the Africans, but they also say it for the other countries in the world as well. But is that true? We all know that
Yeah.
there is nothing like that, because we were equal even back then, and we were sensible even back then, and we're sensible even now. But what happened is that they created this disparity between us, which is still existing in today's world. The institutions which are set for us, the British institutions, which were obviously mostly government institutions, they were also, mostly based on segregation. And if we see our institutions even today in many parts of the world, they are also based on those same rules and regulations which were set by the colonizers. So we can see that the impact has been enormous. And I can keep on talking about this, the divisions and everything. But let us now move on to another part of the world. Obviously, that also belongs to the Europe continent. That is France. If we look to France, we tend to discuss about France as a nation less. But here is the most interesting part. France supplies currencies of 14 African nations, and there is even a term called France Afrique to define the policies set by the French government to rule over these colonies or to control these colonies even now. But they have been declared as former colonies or ex-colonies of France, but they show dominance and interference in their affairs even today. And they also take resources from those countries in the form of gold, mines, oils, and various other resources. So just imagine how these country is even exploiting their colonies even today. How fast the colony is actually working even today, and we actually are not aware of these things, and that is the problem. If you check the United Nations database, even today there are 16 or 17 non-self-governing territories which still remain, which means they are not self-administered, and they are even today ran by the colonies. If I have to give you an example, French Polynesia can be a classic example for this. So I hope this answers your question about the impacts of colonies, which has been prominent throughout the world.
So this is actually a very diverse topic, but it's actually not possible for us to bring in all the informations here. So we will be ending up the video with one last question. Does colonization still exist in the world?
Yes, a very important question. Obviously, colonization still exists today, and it exists in various ways, as we have already tried to touch on these aspects. I've named one country, French Polynesia, but
Yeah.
there are 16 or 17 non-self-governing territories. One can be New Caledonia. The other one is Western Sahara. If we know about that region is also termed as a region which is still colonized even today. And why is this? Why is the colonization process still remaining even today? The General Assembly declared its landmark resolution on granting independence to colonial countries
Yes.
in 1960, but still we can see this colonization process. And now we are actually going through the period of third international decade for the eradication of colonization, which still proves that colonization exists even today. And now we have to look into the fact that what can be done if colonization exists, what can be done, and if colonization has done so much damage to us, what can be done then? What I would like to stress on is the fact that we have to acknowledge the principle that a wrong has been done. we have to acknowledge the principle of reparations. And if we look back, it has been done in the past as well. The Germans, they have acknowledged that the wrong has been done to the Polish. Italians, they have also acknowledged that the wrong has been done to the nation of Libya. And Japan has also done the same in case of Korea. And even the British, the colony which ruled us for almost 200 years, they even accepted their wrongdoings to the New Zealand Maoris. So what I was trying to state is that we have to know this part of the history, how these countries need to actually realize that what they did was wrong, and they have to acknowledge it. And if we talk about a country named Algeria, Algeria faced 132 years of colonization from France, which wreaked havoc into the country. And we believe that even Algeria deserves the apology or the principle of wrongdoing which came from the French. And now let me actually point out to something very interesting, because while I was studying the aspect of colonization, I found out something very interesting, especially regarding the African nations. 70% of the world's cocoa, we all eat chocolates, right?
Yes.
And chocolates are generated from the cocoa, as we all know. So 70% of the world's cocoa come from 4 African countries. Ivory Coast, which was colonized by France. Ghana, which was colonized by United Kingdom. Nigeria and Cameroon. Now, here is the interesting part. Nigeria and Cameroon, right? They were actually one country back then. And what happened is, first, it was colonized by Germany.
Okay.
And then came Treaty of Fez, which came into effect. And that Treaty of Fez gave French the right to colonize it. And interestingly, what happened is, now the British also came in. The British came in and they conquered Nigeria. Now who are the rulers there? We can clearly see 3 colonizers, right? British, French, and the Germans. And what happens is, and it was during the period of World War I. So now what happens is, after the World War I ends, the League of Nations actually has a mandate. It's termed as Class B mandate, which is used to actually transfer the power from one country to another after the result of World War I. And they decided to give the colony to 2 countries after the World War I, obviously to the 2 victorious countries.
Yeah.
And you can guess who are they. They are the British and the French, because the Germans were on the losing side. So you see that the colonization is a very complex topic, and it's a very complex process. And if we have to study further on it, it's really, really vast. And what I was trying to state is that even today, France has stationed 3,500 troops in many parts of Africa. So which shows that colonization is prevalent even today. And what I would stress on is the fact that in the 21st century, we cannot let colonization rule us. And even if we look at the world's biggest power, United States of America, right? Even it was colonized by the British. And it was in 1776 that the Americans came up with a revolution to become free from the British. So we see that almost a huge part of the world and almost all corners of the world were colonized.
Yeah.
And it was mainly the Europeans who were into this colonizing competition, as I already explained you with the fact about Nigeria and Cameroon. And interestingly, what I was stressed on is that the comfortable tone of French President Emmanuel Macron while discussing Africa even today actually depicts on the mentality of the colonialism in the 21st century. And if you allow me, I would like to end with a quotation from
Yes, sir.
Sir Winston Churchill, which I found in the history books during the Bengal famine.
Mm.
I hate Indians. They are a beastly people with a beastly religion. The famine was their own fault for breeding like rabbits, quote unquote. So these are the exact words from Sir Winston Churchill. And I stressed on this only because of the fact that what happens to this young generation and to all of us at times is that we take the concept of wrong idol.
Yeah.
We follow someone blindly, and that wrong idol misleads us. And this is what I found while studying about colonization, that even I myself was considering a wrong idol during the past days by hearing about the glory days of the Second World War from Sir Winston Churchill, which left most of us Bengals in famine. And if we see the facts or statistics, millions of people were affected by the famine. 12 to 29 million people. So just imagine the impact, which was huge and which was vast. And as we recall, we believe that the world needs to know about the history of colonization. Even the British themselves should need to know about it, because if I'm not wrong, in the British history books, the period of colonization is deemed as something very glorious, but that should never be the case, because it left us with a trauma which will actually exist until the future generations set a landmark.
Well,
So
sir,
thank you, that's all.
I believe this the speech that you gave has covered a lot of aspects of the topic, colonization and the post-colonial world. So we'll be ending up the video here. Thank you very much for joining with us in this show.
Thank you. It has been an honor and privilege to join this show, and I truly appreciate the initiative you took